In 2005, a quiet American town was shaken by a terrible event. A young girl disappeared without a trace from her own home, leaving her belongings, phone, and car. Over time, the investigation of this case began to resemble a typical detective series, with one difference. It all happened in real life. A small town is plunged into an atmosphere of fear and mistrust, because for the disappearance of the girl, it could have involved any of the inhabitants. Only 12 years later, the whole world learns the eerie truth. Tara Grinstead was born in 1974 in Hawkinsville, USA. During her high school years, she actively participated in beauty contests, winning prizes. The girl from an early age set a goal: to get a quality education. So the money earned in competitions, she put aside to pay for her education. After college, Tara earned a master's degree in education and landed the job she had long dreamed of. She became a high school history teacher in Ocilla, Georgia. This tiny town was a typical low-rise America. Its population did not exceed 4,000 people, most of whom knew each other well. Life was quiet and measured. None of the locals could think that any serious crime could occur in Ocilla. Tara Grinstead had worked at the local school for several years, and during that time she had developed a great relationship with both staff and students. She was a kind and outgoing person who was always supportive and helpful. In October 2005, this help came in handy for Tara's students who were preparing to participate in a local beauty pageant. Given the fact that their teacher had won prizes at similar events many times, the girls were thrilled to have her support. On Saturday, October 22nd, Tara helped the students with the final touches before the pageant. Afterward, she went to a picnic with her high school friends and didn't return home until 11 p.m., having parked her car outside under a carport. Since then, Tara had stopped making contact. Her mother, who lived in another city, was the most worried. Her daughter always picked up the phone or called back, but this time there was no answer. On Monday, October 24th, her anxiety reached its peak and Tara did not show up for work. Such behavior was highly unusual for her. The girl took her job seriously and would certainly have warned her bosses that she needed time off. Concerned acquaintances of Tara called the police chief Billy Hancock and asked him to see if she was all right. At 10 a.m. that morning, he went to her address. The policeman thought the woman's phone was just dead and that she was either sick or had overslept. When he arrived at her house, he found Tara's car in its usual spot. Her doors were unlocked, but that didn't surprise Billy. In a town this small, the residents had no worries about their cars being stolen. Then he noticed an envelope on the dashboard containing $100 in cash. It was already strange. How could someone as responsible as Tara leave money in a prominent place? Billy knocked on the door, but no one opened it for him. After that, he decided to look around the house. At first glance, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. No signs of a struggle or a break-in, but in Tara's bedroom the detective found a real mess. Quite uncharacteristic for a woman. Her belongings were on the floor, including the clothes she had last been seen in. Her cell phone was on the nightstand charging. It looked as if Tara had left the house briefly, but she was nowhere to be found. On the ground outside the house, the police found the first piece of evidence that suggested a possible crime. There was a latex glove lying around that someone might have used to conceal her fingerprints. The detectives did not consider the possibility that the glove might have belonged to Tara. Hardly anyone used such gloves in the home. Since then, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the equivalent of the FBI, only at the level of one state, got involved in the case. The main version of the investigation was kidnapping. There was very little evidence. Besides the glove, the detectives found only two questionable things. Tara's torn chain was lying on the bedroom floor, and her alarm clock was not in its usual place. But all this did not help detectives solve the mystery of her disappearance. For the small town, this Monday was truly a terrible day. Tara's house was cordoned off, and the school had a meeting. Tara's co-workers and students tried their best to help in the search by forming a group of volunteers. They printed out a stack of flyers with the woman's picture and informed about her disappearance, and within hours the flyers were posted all over the city. Volunteers stayed home that day until 1 a.m. Agents from the Bureau of Investigation interviewed Tara's neighbors and investigated the neighborhood in which she lived. The search involved sniffer dogs, which had been brought in the hope of picking up the missing person's trail. Investigators still had hope that Tara had simply left on foot and the dogs would find her easily. In the meantime, the latex glove was given to experts whose goal was to collect as much data as possible. They managed to get a DNA sample, but no matches could be found in the FBI database. All that was known was that the sample belonged to a man. Alas, all this yielded no results. Tara, as if she had evaporated from her own home. Then investigators began to dig into Tara's personal life and past. It often happens that when a woman disappears, someone from her inner circle is to blame. After studying the man with whom Tara was in a relationship, detectives were unable to identify any suspects. She dated Marcus Harper, a former policeman and military officer, for the longest time. The couple broke up at Tara's initiative about a year before she disappeared. The reason was that the woman wanted to build a family and Marcus was not ready for that. After the breakup, they maintained an amicable relationship, calling and texting each other. Detectives later uncovered one interesting detail. Marcus had come to Osala 3 weeks before Tara disappeared, but he had not told her. Upon learning of Marcus's arrival from mutual acquaintances, the woman became very upset. She repeatedly called him, trying to find out why he had not informed her of his arrival. Soon Tara's condition turned into a real hysteria. Her relatives were very worried and even wondered if Tara was going to do something reckless. However, the girl soon came to her senses, and the police did not consider Marcus a suspect. The couple had been together for a long time, but their relationship ended and the detectives could not find a motive for the crime. An interesting twist soon awaited them. Police learned that Tara had been threatened by her former student. On March 30th, 2005, 7 months before the girl disappeared, he came to her house and behaved extremely aggressively. When Tara refused to let him in, the guy started banging on the door and the neighbors had to call the police. It turned out that the young man had been in love with the teacher since high school. According to her acquaintances, the former student was emotionally unstable and behaved strangely and even frighteningly. Tara tried to help him deal with his problems for a while, but his mental state only worsened. After that incident, when the young man tried to break into her house, the woman filed a report against him. She seriously feared he might hurt her. After Tara went missing, the police tracked the young man down. He worked in a neighboring town about 150 kilometers from Asila. The boy provided detectives with an alibi for the night of his former teacher's disappearance. It was impossible to establish his involvement in the case. A business card of a certain police officer was also found in the woman's house. It turned out that Tara had been dating him for some time. But at the time of her disappearance, he was already living in another city. The policeman also provided an alibi for the night of Tara's disappearance. This effectively ended the list of possible suspects. With no leads in hand, the police decided to organize a search for the girl 2 weeks after her disappearance. Such a belated decision seems strange. After all, it was clear of the first minutes, Tara had not left home of her own free will. Hundreds of volunteers were called in to search the area around Asila. Volunteers went through forests, ditches, and rivers, but they couldn't find a single trace of Tara. During the search, it was reported that a house and car had burned down near Tara's home. Locals almost unanimously agreed that the incident had something to do with the woman's disappearance. Perhaps the perpetrator was trying to cover his tracks, or the people were so shocked and frightened that they found each event suspicious. Whatever the case, the search yielded no results, and the police were faced with a grim reality. They simply had no leads left. The next few years brought the police no closer to solving this mystery. It wasn't until 2009 that an event occurred that brought the missing Tara Grinstead back into the spotlight. A user created a YouTube channel and posted an extremely creepy video. A man was sitting in the frame, his face plastered over and his voice altered. In the video, he claimed to be involved in the disappearance of 16 girls, naming them by name. Among them was Tara Grinstead. The unidentified man added that he had hidden the bodies securely and would give clues about the burial site in new videos. Police immediately checked the video and found that all 16 names did indeed belong to the missing women. The FBI was able to track down the author of the video fairly quickly. It turned out to be 27-year-old Andrew Haley. After his arrest, he said that he was just joking. The police could not connect Andrew with any of the 16 missing girls, but he still could not avoid a trial. For perjury and tampering with evidence, the man was sentenced to 2 years of forced labor and 13 years of probation. Momentary hopes of solving this cold case faded, and once again the police were left without a single lead. In December 2010, Tara Grinstead was officially declared dead because there was simply nothing to work with. As the years passed, the townspeople remembered Tara Grinstead's disappearance perfectly. Remembered, but less and less discussed. Talk of Tara remained only behind closed doors. The topic hardly ever came up in everyday life. The town had changed forever. Fear and mistrust permeated the locals for years to come. It wasn't until 2016 that something happened that got people talking openly about Tara again. Atlanta-based journalist Payne Lindsay created his own podcast devoted to mystery cases. And for the first issue he took on the Tara Grinstead case. The man and his colleague traveled to Wasilla, where they met private investigator Maurice Goodwin. Together they began working on the case literally from scratch. They had no access to police records, so the only available source of information were the people of the town. At first, they were only able to talk to friends and relatives of Tara. Outsiders avoided talking about the missing girl in every way, but it didn't last long. Lindsay's enthusiasm managed to revive interest in the case, and soon the people of Wasilla were discussing it again. Lindsay and Godwin worked through every possible lead. They considered 3 possible suspects: Tara's ex-boyfriends and a student who tried to break into her house. Along the way, they talked to anyone who might have any useful information. They were so passionate about the case that on several occasions they thought a clue was literally 1 step away. One day, Payne received a call in which an unknown person suggested they look for remains on Tara's property. The police did so, and at some point they managed to find the bones. True, experts quickly determined that the bones belonged to an animal. Despite the excitement and a new wave of interest in the case, no serious progress was made. Or rather, they failed to solve the case directly during the creation of the podcast, but it was this amateur investigation that was decisive in the long-awaited denouement, and the denouement came completely unexpectedly. In early 2017, Brooke Sheridan came to the police. Her story shocked the detectives, who no longer believed that the truth would ever come out. Brooke told investigators that her ex-boyfriend named Bo Dukes once confessed to her. He had helped his friend dispose of Tara Grinstead's body. Upon learning of this, the girl repeatedly begged the guy to confess to everything, but he remained silent. After listening to Brooke's story, the police did not rush things. Who knows, maybe this woman just wanted fame and attention. Especially when a successful podcast got everyone talking about the case again. The detectives decided to play it safe. They asked Brooke to wear a wire and go to Bo to beat out a confession, and it worked. The man didn't deny his involvement, and the police had probable cause to arrest him. To their surprise, Bo immediately cooperated with the investigation and laid all his cards on the table. Later, detectives would say that he was just tired of living with this burden on his soul. Late that night, he got a call from his friend and former classmate Ryan Duke. He asked to borrow a truck to help him with something, then added, "I broke into Tara Grinstead's house to steal some money, but something didn't go according to plan and I killed her." According to Ryan's story, after a party with friends, he went for a drive. At this point, he decided to break into someone's house to steal money, and his choice was Tara's house. He was under the influence of illegal substances at the time. After opening the door with a credit card, he broke into the house and began looking for money. Tara spotted him and a struggle ensued between them, from which only Ryan came out alive. When Bo arrived at Tara's house in a truck, they loaded the woman's body into it and drove her into the woods. The two of them then got rid of the body for several days. This story shocked the residents of Asilla. Jukes and Juke were never considered suspects, for they simply had no motive, nor were there any clues that could link these two to the disappearance of the woman. Despite a full confession, Bo Dukes would not testify against himself in court. At the trial, he spoke to Tara's relatives, wept, and apologized for what he had done. Bo spent a long time in the military, was a veteran, and had many decorations, but the court ruled 25 years in prison for helping cover up a crime. Tara Grinstead's murder trial by Ryan Duke was set for April 1st, 2019, but the Georgia Supreme Court postponed the trial on March 28, 2019, after Duke's attorneys said they were unconstitutionally denied funding for experts to testify on Duke's behalf. The trial began on May 9, 2022. At trial, Ryan Duke pleaded not guilty to murder and charged Bo Dukes with murder. On May 20, 2022, a jury found Ryan Duke not guilty of murder, aggravated assault, and burglary, but guilty of concealment of death. At trial, Duke testified that his confessions to the murder was false, telling the jury that he had done it under the influence of drugs and in fear of the real killer, his friend with a similar last name, Dukes. He said Bo Dukes woke him up in the mobile home where they lived together in 2005 and told him he had killed Tara Grinstead, then showed Dukes their teacher's purse and wallet. Although her body was never found, investigators matched Grinstead's DNA to bone fragments found at the location where Ryan Duke testified to investigators that he and Bo Dukes had burned her. On May 23, 2022, Ryan Duke was sentenced by the Rowan County Superior Court to 10 years in prison for concealing the body. The sentence imposed by the judge was the maximum penalty allowed. By the time Ryan Duke was sentenced, he had already served about half of that sentence while awaiting trial. Prosecutors insisted that Duke's confession included details that only the killer knew, such as Duke telling investigators that he called Grinstead's home from a payphone after running away from home to see if she would answer. When she didn't, he returned and found her dead. Investigators also found Duke's DNA on a latex glove, found in Grinstead's yard. However, his testimony raised enough doubt in the jury's mind that he was acquitted of all charges except concealing her death. Bo Dukes was subpoenaed to testify, but refused to answer the court's questions, citing his Fifth Amendment right against testifying against himself. When the truth about his high-profile case came out, Tara Grinstead's friends and relatives relieved themselves of the burden of obscurity. Her mother confessed that all these years she had secretly hoped for a miracle that her daughter would return to her alive. Alas, reality turned out to be cruel, senseless, and devoid of any miracles. At least now the whole world knows exactly what happened in that little town back in 2005. If you liked this video, write your opinion about it and give it a like. Take care and thanks for watching.